So we had just finished up a game of Star Trek Attack Wing, and it was the most curious of questions. It's always interesting after a big narrative game, the various things that you think about in the narrative. I mean, yes, we're doing this wargaming thing, rolling dice, pushing around miniatures, flipping cards, coming up with tactica. It's a war game. We want to win. But at least one of the things that I strive for in my games is this idea of narrative, where we're going to step outside of space and time and step into that narrative with those painted miniatures, with the awesome terrain, with the music, with the snacks, with the battle effects and all that, and create it. So it's always interesting to see after the game kind of what players are thinking or what questions might arise. I consider that like an exciting part of the game. What were you thinking? And what you're thinking in that moment really could be anything. So we're working our way through the Dominion War, Battle for Deep Space Nine. And after a game, my friend asks the question out of nowhere, but I know what he was thinking because there was some close combat action in the game. Do you think, he's playing the Federation, do you think martial arts would work on aliens in the various Star Trek universe? True hand-to-hand combat, or maybe close quarters fighting with various weapons. I mean, we see that in the Star Trek narrative, but would it really work? And the various systems that humanity has developed, and I imagine by the time, if we're talking timeline with the Federation, would that work? Would martial arts of today work on the various aliens found in the Star Trek universe? And my first thought on that was, well, yes, because they're kind of human-like. But then I was thinking about taking that Vulcan perspective. There's a lot of different races and beings, just humanoid factors in the Star Trek universe, and they're not all the same. So this idea in the martial arts, and certainly feedback, there has to be a few of you out here on my channel that study the martial arts or have experience as a martial arts enthusiast. My thought, martial arts being human-based as it exists right now, or perhaps early Federation, works on the human being, the various weak points on a human being, the various ways that movement and joints are manipulated, taking into account the human body for distance, timing, rhythm, balance, all those kind of factors that make up those laws of movement. That's going to be different. There's going to be different weak points. There's going to be different ways of moving, different mobility on aliens. So would a pure, unarmed, hand-to-hand martial art work on the various alien races in Star Trek? And we were kind of talking back and forth, kind of exploring it from that perspective. And my thought was, I really don't know. I don't think it's as clear-cut as possible. But then you get into this thought process of eventually, yes, the various cultures of Star Trek, the warrior cultures of the Jem'Hadar, the warrior cultures of the Klingons. I mean, would it eventually, as these various races inside and outside of the Federation achieve warp travel, make first contact, have that knowledge, combine that information, would there be some sort of one universal martial art that kind of takes all that into account? Or are the various races in the Star Trek universe, are they close enough? I know there was that one episode, I think it was Next Generation. It wasn't Deep Space Nine. I think it was Next Generation, where kind of that founding race, I guess kind of the engineers of the Star Trek universe, appeared before the Federation. I think Picard was there, and I think a Romulan delegation, and I think a Klingon delegation, and they just flat out disbelieved it. But of course, the Federation, believing everything, accepted that. So maybe there is that possibility of a common thread. So you never know. You play some games, you roll some dice, you push around some ships, and the questions afterwards, you're like, and I know what predicated that question. We kind of fought close and had some ships pass by that were really damaged, shields down, a lot of internal damage, and it was like, I'd send over a boarding party. This is a chance to capture some tech, find out what that Breen weaponry is doing. How would I do that? And we can't do that because the narrative of the game and the rules of the game. But that thought crossed my mind, and that thought crossed my opponent's mind, which leads to the question, would the martial arts work? So playing games, talking about games, exploring games, and that question, as far out there as it was, really brought us back to the heart of the game, where in that moment, pushing around those ships, rolling the dice, flipping the cards, and listening to that Star Trek music, that battle music, like, we were there. We were having a lot of fun. And that is what I strive for in all my games.